Betray my allies? Yeah, sure, that's okay. No problem with that. Cheat on my wife? Whoa. Whoa. Over the line. Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video, we're going to be talking about A Drowned Kingdom by P.L. Stuart, which is the first book in the Drowned Kingdom saga. And I've been meaning to do this for quite some time, so I was really happy to finally be able to do so. And this is one of those books that I don't entirely know what I expected, but this definitely was not what I expected, really at all. But it had a really enjoyable time with it. So this story is following the character Othrun, who is a second prince of Atalantics, and he's kind of trying to figure out ways to be in more power, and some things happen basically that end up with him and a small group of his people being exiled because of rebellion, and then they have to go to another land essentially because Atalantics ends up being destroyed. This is all blurb, so this isn't like actual spoiler, by the way. That's kind of the point. It has very obvious parallel to Atlantis and Atlanteans, which I would say actually this is very nitpicky, but probably my one real complaint about this book is that it uses Atalantics and Atalantean instead of just saying Atlantis and Atlantean. I just felt like, I mean, it's so close, you might as well call it that. But I think just trying to make it very clear that it is, a fantasy setup that's done there. But so Othran, who is just a very morally flexible kind of person, is then trying to figure out essentially how he's going to create a new huge kingdom for himself and his people and take all of this power. And as I alluded to in the intro, it's funny because very early on, almost immediately in the book, we find out that the Atalanteans, their strategy for conquering is to make allies and then end up turning on them and just taking all of their land over time. So we know he's totally fine with this, and yet he's also got other parts where, with like the chivalric codes, where he's like, I won't do this, that, or the other thing. But what he will do is really interesting. And so this has a lot of politics in it. And that's what especially this first book, I think with the second book, there's likely to be a lot more action in it as well. And there's definitely some here also. But it has a lot of politics and has this kind of feel of looking at how a kingdom works. And we start by seeing how Atlantics like was run, how things happened, learning some things there, but then the story kind of doesn't really start in a way until we leave there and are starting over. That seems like that's what this series is really going to be starting with, but here we get an introduction to kind of find out more about the character and about some of the history here, and so you have a lot of that with him trying to figure out not only with people of his own party, with warlords from the land they're going to, trying to really just like carve his way and go through. And then there's also a lot of play with religion, because very important to the prince and to his people is the single god, which they firmly believe. And there are lots of other people who have believe in other gods, including on the land they go to, where they worship elemental beings, basically, which are like gods and goddesses of the elements. And so kind of that look of, okay, I believe in just the one single God, but there seems to be some sort of power here as well. So it really deep looks into that. And I think if you like the kind of slower burn exploration of politics and religion and history and just ideas and like looking at that kind of thing, I think you'll find a lot to enjoy here. And it was a really interesting time through. I have to say, I did end up I read some physical and then I did some audio because I was doing this for around readathon and I haven't had more audio time. The narrator for this, I absolutely, or there's two, but the narrator for the main character who does most of the narration, absolutely perfect with the line between the prince being like, petulant and cocky and actually sincere. Like really, really fantastic job. Brought that character really to life as well. Because it's an interesting character too. And I feel like Ultron would be the villain in many cases, but he's of course the hero of his own story. And so he just thinks that, he can do whatever he wants and that, it's fine and people just need to accept that. And so there's that kind of conflict there with him internally, his conflict with him and other people who may disagree with what he's doing, and then also setting up for what seems like it's going to be a pretty epic scope of him trying to carve a kingdom out in this new land and work with all these different warlords. And you can imagine there's probably going to be some betrayals coming as well, just because, like I said, immediately we're kind of established that. But P.L. Stewart does a really fantastic job with balancing the character, because the character has a lot of flaws. They are definitely morally flexible, but we also see that they are sincere about some things. They do legitimately care about their people to an extent, and they actually are, they have good qualities too. So it's very much a character with shades of gray. It's not like a good guy or a bad guy. It's just this is this character, and I think that's a really great way to do it. And you would expect in this type of story usually either that it's very much like the shining example, the white knight who's trying to come into this other land and conquer, and that's not the character at all. But he's also just not this villainous, deceitful, no redeeming qualities type of person either. Very much within the shades of gray, which I think is what makes it a really interesting character, and kind of seeing him and how he reacts to different things with the story as well. I had a really enjoyable time with reading this. And the story, like I said as well, this book is starting to set up a lot, and it does move actually fairly quickly. That's why it's like calling this kind of slow burn is, I feel like it's not necessarily a slow burn, it's just kind of like the pacing is steady. It's just not on the fast end, I would say, is more so how I would describe this. We're moving, we're finding out some stuff up front, and then we're going. And once we really kind of get going, it seems like it's speeding up a little bit, but really nicely written. Like I said, really interesting character. A lot of the exploration of politics, both intra-kingdom and inter-kingdom, and trying to conquer and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of really interesting aspects that are explored here that I really enjoyed, and I'm very, very curious to continue this and see what P.L. Stewart does with the rest of this series. Those really, though, are my thoughts on A Drowned Kingdom by P.L. Stewart. Let me know in the comments if you've read this one and kind of what your thoughts are on this. As well, I have heard that the books even start to just like really jump and do even more. So one, I'm very excited to continue. Make sure to give the video a like if you enjoyed it. Check the link in the description as always for the Wizardly Enclave Discord if you want to chat books, whether this book, other books, any books, really anything at all. It's a lot of fun and we'd love to have you. And of course, if you enjoy my content, make sure to subscribe.